Considered by most of fandom to be the best season of the original series, Season 2 of TOS would introduce many new concepts to Star Trek that would continue over the franchise's long history, including that of alternative universes. And today, we take a look at one of the best alternative universe episodes ever made, Mirror Mirror. Hello and welcome to Backtrek, a web series that focuses on the background information of any given topic in Star Trek. In this episode, we're taking a look at Star Trek the Original Series' episode Mirror Mirror to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Most Star Trek fans, when discussing the best and most important episode of TOS, will often point to City on the Edge of Forever, but I tend to disagree. Though City is great to be sure, it simply didn't have the same effect on pop culture as Mirror Mirror had. You don't see other series throughout history parroting or nodding at City the same way you do Mirror Mirror. In fact, so ingrained in pop culture is Mirror Mirror that whenever any show deals with alternate universes or the multiverse, you'll invariably get at least one of its characters sporting a goatee. Which is of course a direct nod to this episode, symbolizing that you've now crossed over the mirror's threshold and are witnessing an opposite version of that same character. Mirror Mirror was written by the very talented Jerome Bixby, who also wrote the TOS episodes By Any Other Name, Day of the Dove, and Requiem for Methuselah. This story, however, was considered such a masterpiece that it actually garnered a 1968 Hugo Award nomination in the category for Best Dramatic Presentation, which he shared with the director of this episode, Mark Daniels. Bixby was also a writer of a little short story called It's a Good Life, which itself would be adapted into the now famous Twilight Zone episode of the same name. Mark Daniels, the director of Mirror Mirror, was no slouch when it came to his craft either. He had actually directed the first 38 episodes of the hit show I Love Lucy, and would go on to direct 14 episodes of the original series. He would also go on to write the Star Trek the Animated Series episode One of Our Planets is Missing, though that would be his only writing credit. The melding of these two amazing individuals would produce something so special that the episode Mirror Mirror would often be cited as a tribute to both men's greatness. Jerome Bixby based this episode very loosely on his own short story he had titled One Way Street. In the original draft for Mirror Mirror, Kirk would have traveled to the Mirror Universe alone, and the Mirror Universe Federation would be in the midst of a war battling a new enemy known as the Tharn. A bit of Trek trivia for you here. This episode was considered very controversial at the time, due to both Uhura and Marlena showing their navels. To slip this big no-no past the censors, the production crew reportedly distracted the observer from standards and practices with a long lunch, while those scenes were being filmed, thus being able to include female navels in this episode, much to the aghast of the network censors of the time that only realized the depth of the deception after the episode had already aired. Barbara Luna would guest star in this episode as the Captain's Woman, consequently becoming a female desired by many young adults who loved the show. You see, she was not only a competent female on television, but in the mid-60s was also a strong one, having the intelligence to go toe-to-toe with any of the main characters, and this was an unusual sight to behold during the time. And Luna's performance is fantastic, portraying those subtle qualities that most female TOS actors weren't allowed to show us, again because they were simply unacceptable for the times. What makes it even more amazing is that Luna herself was suffering from strep throat and a fever of 103 degrees during the filming of this episode, causing the filming of her and Shatner's makeout scene to be done 3 weeks later. Luna would go on to have many guest starring roles in both television and film during her long acting career, which included being a regular on the soap opera One Life to Live. She would come back in sorts to Star Trek itself, agreeing to appear twice in the fan film series Star Trek New Voyages, now known as Star Trek Phase 2, though not to reprise her original role. Many of the main casts also loved this episode, as not only did it allow them to stretch their acting muscle, playing characters very much opposite of that which they were used to, but it also opened up many possibilities for future dives into alternative universes, though sadly, for the original series, these dives would never come to fruition. Due to budgetary limitations of the time, yet needing to show the transition of the Prime crew to the Mirror Universe, no new footage was shot of the USS Enterprise being rechristened to the ISS Enterprise. Instead, the production crew would combine footage of the original 11-foot model along with footage of the 3-foot model, the 3-foot model being the one regularly used for the series. This caused some interesting changes between Enterprises in each of the universes, most notable being the change to the warp nacelle domes, the Prime Universe having the fanned and colored light Bussard collectors, while the Mirror Universe version still had the cap domes in their place that had been seen in the first two pilots. This use of archived footage contributed to a sense of being in another universe, rather than being seen as a cheap production trick. Although use of this footage was in itself brilliant, it did present one huge problem. Due to the Mirror Universe Enterprise being, well, mirrored, the registration number on the nacelles ended up being backwards, as the production staff merely reversed the footage. This was, of course, unacceptable to Roddenberry, and so new scenes were in fact then shot. But because the port side of the model was unfinished, they reversed the Enterprise's registry on the model and filmed it that way, flipping it around later in post-production. The remastered version of this episode, released on November 11th, 2006, would see the Enterprise retain these original model attributes, though the Enterprise herself would receive one major change, that being her hull color being altered to a darker gunmetal gray tone than in the original episode, done to give this Enterprise a darker feel. Also, new views of the Enterprise herself were added, where the registry and name ISS Enterprise are clearly visible. The effects for Mr. Kyle's torture and Chekhov's stint in the agonizer booth would also be changed, and the overall effects worked out well, enhancing the episode rather than detracting from it. Again, due to budgetary concerns, the internal layout of the ISS Enterprise was virtually identical to its Prime counterpart, though there were slight changes made. These changes included the addition of the Terran Empire symbol to the automatic doors of the starship, and a slight modification to the captain's chair on the bridge. Another bit of Trek trivia for you all: the captain's chair with its high back, created to appear as a throne of sorts for Captain Kirk to occupy during this episode, would be reused as Commodore Bob Wesley's command chair in the TOS episode The Ultimate Computer. The uniforms for this universe would receive an overhaul to make our hero counterparts appear far more like pirates than that of Starfleet officers. Gold sashes and Terran Empire pins would make the crew of the starship feel far more alien than the audience was used to, once again heightening the tension the audience was to feel while watching this particular Trek outing. And a little known bit of Trek trivia for you all would see the phasers worn by everyone in the Mirror Universe actually worn upside down. This was to subconsciously point out the differences of this universe to its fandom audience. Once again, the musical talents of composer Fred Steiner was used to optimal effect in this episode. The music itself being recycled and adapted music he had composed to represent the Romulans in the episode Balance of Terror, with a few musical cues from Mudd's Women thrown in there for good measure. It's very rare to find any Star Trek fan that really dislikes Mirror Mirror, and again, its influence on pop culture cannot be denied, as the moment many of us see a suddenly goateed hero of ours in any other show will constantly bring up the memory of the evil Mirror Universe and a goateed Spock. It is certainly an episode that deserves all the praise it receives, and it itself has aged quite well. And Star Trek for its part would continue to honor this episode with other Trek series episodes having our heroes travel to see their Mirror Universe counterparts, with various degrees of success. And regardless of what you think of this episode as a whole, one thing is clear: Mirror Mirror has definitely earned its place in Star Trek history.
Captain's log, stardate unknown. I command an enterprise where assassination of superiors is a common means of advancing in rank.
You must know what you're doing.
Let me go! Spock! Get these men off me! Spock!
You traitors! All right, Spock. Whatever your game is, I'll play it.
Our minds are merging, Doctor. I am ordered to kill you and to proceed against the Halkans as the new captain of the Enterprise.
Everything you know about the Starship Enterprise is about to change drastically. Now, the crew you thought you could trust
So you die, Captain, and we all move up in the rank.
Let me go! Spock!
is ready to betray you.
Is that a threat?
I do not threaten. I am ordered to kill you and to proceed as the new captain of the Enterprise.
Star Trek.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Backtrack. What do you think of the episode Mirror Mirror? How do you feel about the episodes other series have made based in the Mirror universe? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel escape the evil clutches of our own counterparts? Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper. This is actually a favorite episode of mine, but when watching it for this video with an unbiased eye, one thing I have to admit is how impossible it really is. You really can't have two universes so in sync like this, at least not for very long. Think about it, these two enterprises are on the same mission, with the same orders to negotiate during the same ion storm. Given the differences that Kirk hears when he asks for a service record,
succeeded to command ISS Enterprise through assassination of Captain Christopher Pike. First action, suppression of Gorlan uprising through destruction of rebel home planet. Second action, execution of 5,000 colonists on Vega 9.
This really doesn't seem possible. When Kirk calls for transport at the beginning of the episode, Kirk closes his communicator and drops his arm. Yet, when Kirk appears on the transporter pad before crossing into the Mirror universe, his arm is raised as if he's still talking into a communicator. If you look at the interior of the Mirror Universe Enterprise, everywhere you look there is a symbol of the Terran Empire. Why then is the outside of the ship the exact same as our universe's Enterprise? Shouldn't there be tons of symbols there? Especially since we know decal-wise, ships in the Mirror universe like to be adorned on the outside as well. See Star Trek Enterprise in A Mirror Darkly. When Kirk makes his log entries, he's continually saying stardate unknown.
Captain's log, stardate unknown. During an ion storm, my landing party is beamed back to the Enterprise and found it and the personnel aboard chained.
But why is it unknown? Does the Empire not have stardates? Could he not simply look this up? And if he's making a log entry based for our universe, meaning he intends to take it with him, then wouldn't he know what the stardate is in our universe? That as a whole, though, doesn't make much sense, as how would he intend to take these log entries with him? During the Let's Fight Spock in Sickbay scene, they really did a horrible job picking Spock's stunt double. Every time it's the double, suddenly, Spock has curly hair. While Marlena is saving Kirk from being killed by Sulu in sickbay, why doesn't she kill Sulu as well? So if you watch the scene where Kirk and company arrive back in our universe, you can see security officers standing nearby. Presumably, we're led to believe that our Spock beamed back the evil Kirk and company at the same time our Kirk and company beamed back to our universe. It again just seems impossible that these two events would line up so perfectly.